Hello, random stranger. It's Hippie time, and the light at the end of the tunnel is getting close because we only have 3 episodes left. Something cool that Iseno Alpha pointed out last time is that episode nine's title was Hippie or Sound Euphonium. And I actually hadn't noticed that in my first watch through, but now that I know, it's like a huge flashing sign. The fact that episode nine's title shares its name with the show's title signifies that there was something about that episode that was absolutely central to the key theme or themes of the show as a whole. So today, we're essentially going to be trying to pin down what it is that Hibike has been trying to tell us this entire time. Episode 9 focused on 2 key things. There's Asuka's passion for the youth and also Kumiko's role in helping her rediscover that passion. There's also the fact that the final frame of the OP shows Asuka and Kumiko laughing together. And so somehow these two are at the center of the key message of Hibike. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I think the central theme of Hibike Euphonium has been exploring the conflict between pursuing one's passion versus doing what someone else or everyone else expects you to do or thinks is realistic for you to do. Okay, so with this whole situation with Asuka not going to nationals, I think Reina represents what most people's default position would be. You know, there's nothing that they can really do about the situation. It's a decision that only Asuka and her mom can make, and Taki is just being practical by replacing Asuka with Natsuki. In her typical fashion, you know, Reina may have said it in a seemingly unsympathetic way, but she's also not wrong. It's kind of like the adult thing to do and the adult way to think. It is to prioritize the band's needs over any one individual's situation. Whereas Kumiko is more about what feels right. You know, she knows Asuka's true feelings about nationals, that she actually really wants to go. And Kumiko isn't afraid to say that truth out loud, even if it goes against so-called practicalities. She's all about chasing that dream because she believes everyone should have the right to have their dream come true, even if they seem unrealistic or there are certain barriers in the way. She chafes against things that get in the way of what feels good and what feels right. Even if Asuka herself seemingly has accepted her fate and is really pushing ahead with Natsuki as her replacement, this conflict between Reina's pragmatism and Kumiko's idealism, I think it mirrors this larger struggle that a lot of us face when deciding whether to follow our dreams or sort of take the more sensible, more realistic path. And I love how in Hibike, neither perspective is presented as entirely right or entirely wrong, but rather as 2 different sides of a very complex issue. I think it's also interesting to dig deeper into the complexity of Reina's character at this point. You know, she clearly believes in pursuing her own passions and is quite idealistic with that regard. And she's willing to go against social norms and expectations to do that. On the other hand, she kind of reserves that more idealistic, go for your dreams kind of outlook for those whom she thinks are truly talented. So there's a pragmatic streak to her idealism. She believes that people should follow their dreams, but only when there is a realistic chance of success for them. So when it comes to other people's struggles, you know, I think Reina just often takes a more realistic approach. And I think that might stem from her, well, just the fact that she has very high standards. She might not feel that everyone has the necessary talent or drive to succeed. You could interpret that in a couple of ways. You know, perhaps it does show maybe a bit of elitism, you know, this idea that passionate pursuit is only really worthwhile for the exceptionally gifted. And I think that really contrasts with Kumiko's more egalitarian, more blunt approach of encouraging everyone to follow their hearts regardless of the cost. Or, you know, it could definitely be read in a more generous way, you know, that Reina is just trying to protect others from disappointment if she feels that they're really just not cut out for this really difficult follow your dream path. I just thought it was interesting that there's this really nuanced way of presenting how Reina feels about this whole theme of passion versus practicality. It suggests that even among those who do believe in pursuing passions and following dreams, there can be different philosophies about who should be encouraged to do so and under what circumstances. And I've certainly seen those differences in opinion in like my experiences of high school orchestra and then in like professional music circles. You do need a very healthy degree of pragmatism to accept that it's true, you know, not everyone's going to make the cut given the very limited opportunities and the very intense competition. You know, that's just reality. So that's the Reina part. On the other hand, you have to balance that realism or that pragmatism with the idea that even so, everyone still deserves the chance to engage with music and to follow their passions with music, regardless of their ultimate prospects. And that perspective puts more value on playing music for its own sake, separate from any career ambitions or any external achievements. So really, the challenge lies in navigating or balancing between those two perspectives. Okay, so Kumiko, she's actually not alone in her desire for Asuka to return. You know, there's a whole bunch of them, including Natsuki and of course Kaori and Mizore and Nozomi. They're all doing everything in their power to get her back. Really special mention to Kaori, whom I love for really using her powers of manipulation for good, including bribing Asuka's mom. And I also loved that all the senpais, like, they know that they're sending Kumiko into the lion's den by getting her to go to Asuka's place and kind of talk her into coming back. So yeah, I just love that Kumiko just has no power to resist her senpais. So I'd say another key theme of Hibike is friendship. Much as it pains me to say such a sickeningly sweet thing, but I really feel like friendship ties in with the other key theme we've already mentioned, which is like pursuing your passion for music or your passion for anything, really. In that the students help each other nurture and, in Asuka's case, save their passion for music in the face of a lot of difficulties that life throws at them. It's actually really funny how everyone seems to think Kumiko has this magic power to connect with people or to fix things that appear unfixable. And, you know, it's actually, they do have some evidence to prove that. Kumiko, she became close to Reina, which seemed like an impossible thing to do for most people. She was able to help out Mizore and now Asuka. So I don't think it's so much that Kumiko is able to fix their problems, but it's more her genuine presence that she has and her capacity to listen to people, to empathize with what they're going through. She doesn't really have to do anything. She just needs to be herself and to just blurt out anything that's on her mind. And miraculously, somehow that helps people gain clarity on their situation and to open up to new experiences or to face their difficulties. So Kumiko has this rare talent where she can create a space for people to express what they really feel and to explore their own thoughts, which often then leads them to their own conclusions or their resolutions. Like when Natsu was saying how she wants Asuka to come back, even if it means losing her spot in the band, Kumiko wasn't afraid to be like, really? Like, is that really what you want? Even if the easier thing in that sort of conversation or the more socially palatable thing is to just not dig and to accept people's surface level responses. You know, so Kumiko's not really constrained by social niceties. Like, she didn't go to Natsuki, oh, okay, well, that's nice of you. You know, she was like, really? Is that what you really want? What makes Kumiko so effective is that she's not consciously trying to get people to open up. It's kind of just a natural part of her personality. She can't help but dig deeper. And people are drawn to her precisely because she doesn't try to be anything other than herself, which in turn encourages them to kind of do the same, to be their authentic selves. Okay, so here, Reina confirmed everything that Natsuki had just said about how Kumiko just has a way with people because she's experienced it herself, in what was a very gay scene with these sweeping dramatic shots and these very intimate close-ups that really are only reserved for these Kumirei moments. Reina explained how Kumiko has a way of piercing through people's defenses by seeing right through the facades that they put up to protect themselves. She also doesn't shy away from stating these hard truths either, which kind of jolts people out of their complacency or their resignation when it comes to their dreams and their passions. And I think that's why Kumiko, as we saw mostly in season 1, that's why Kumiko resonated so deeply with Reina, who herself values authenticity and the courage to pursue your goals above all else, regardless of what everyone else around you thinks. And then, because Kumiko has this tendency to grab someone and peel back their layers and force them to confront aspects of themselves that they might otherwise avoid, they in turn want to grab Kumiko and peel back her layers to find out what makes her tick. Can you imagine having someone like Kumiko in your life? I mean, maybe you already do. I think it'd be a net benefit and kind of really refreshing to have someone who doesn't suppress their feelings or who doesn't sugarcoat things for you, but who still clearly cares about you and cares deeply about you. I don't know, I feel like we all kind of need a Kumiko in our lives. You need someone with whom you can feel free to express all these complicated, contradictory feelings without the fear of being judged. Honestly, even if these two don't end up marrying each other, which I still think they should, you could really feel the love that Reina has for Kumiko, or at least this very close intimacy that she hasn't experienced with anyone else. But it was a bit odd because could there be trouble in paradise? Kumiko has been so distracted with Asuka that she hasn't even really thought about Reina. And this shot at the end where Asuka returns and Kumiko is really happy about it, but then the camera panned over to Reina, who kind of looks like she's a bit peeved off or a bit envious. I don't really know. Maybe it's just red herring and Reina's distance has nothing to do with Asuka. Or just going back to the dynamic of Reina's pragmatism versus Kumiko's idealism. Maybe Reina's feeling apprehensive at how Kumiko seems to be inserting herself into Asuka's very messy family situation. And she's kind of watching Kumiko try to inspire others to chase their dreams, which is a good thing. But she herself is just a little bit more hesitant. She's more realistic about the chances of success, particularly when, everyone's aware of how difficult Asuka's mum can be. While Taki was instructing Kumiko on how to help Natsuki, the camera focused on this shot of the photo on his desk of him, his wife, Niyama-sensei, and Hashimoto. And in that photo, we see this very stark contrast between Taki and the others. So while the others look very happy and very vibrant, Taki is more like withdrawn and uncertain. And I think it suggests that Taki's journey towards embracing his passion for music was inspired by and nurtured by those around him. And you can imagine how the other three would have dragged him around everywhere, to music events and clubs and bars and just these random outings. And that much of the person he is today was probably shaped by them. And they seem to have been the catalysts that helped Taki discover and pursue his own passions, or even just like a vivaciousness for life, perhaps against his initial hesitations. Taki's wife, in particular, seems to have been much more than just a partner. She was a model of how to live life with enthusiasm and purpose. And that zeal for life and her encouragement likely played a crucial role in shaping Taki into this like dedicated, passionate music teacher that we see now. And so it's really sad to think about. Like, he didn't just lose his wife, but also someone who was his primary source of inspiration and joy and confidence. And I could see how losing her would have deeply affected his ability to keep pursuing his passion with the same kind of vigor that he maybe had when she was around. But I think it's promising that Taki's like current actions, his dedication to the school band and mentoring the students suggests that he is, or he has found his way back to that passion, maybe through teaching and nurturing the musical aspirations of his students. He's reconnecting with that joy and the purpose that his wife once inspired in him. Taki's story, as hinted at by just this one photograph, which is crazy, I think it again goes back to the show's central theme, that the pursuit of passion is not always a straightforward path, and so many things come to knock it down that you have to overcome. But also that passion, it can be inspired by others, it can be challenged by loss, but it can also be rediscovered through just new and unexpected avenues. This super awkward conversation Kumiko had with Asuka on the way to her home was fantastic, because it really was only awkward on Kumiko's end. I really love this shot of Kumiko's shadow, just 1 or 2 steps behind Asuka, kind of like portraying her fear of the situation and her awkwardness, both in equal measure, and also how Asuka somehow always stayed slightly out of reach of Kumiko, who is truly trying to understand her. There was a lot of visual metaphor in this episode, and just Kumiko's shadow trailing behind Asuka's, I think, highlighted a couple of key things. One, it's this Kumiko's constant pursuit of Asuka. She's always 1 or 2 steps behind, always trying to catch up to what Asuka's really trying to say or not saying. That slight shadow lag, I feel like it really visualizes Kumiko's internal struggle with Asuka. She has this desire to connect with Asuka, but she's also battled against her fear of overstepping the line or saying the wrong thing. I also feel like it portrays Asuka's elusiveness. Despite their physical proximity to each other, Asuka remains emotionally distant, and it kind of brings home the challenge of really getting to know someone who has deliberately or unconsciously built walls around themselves to just protect themselves from any vulnerability that they might show. But also, I think there's a bit of encouragement in that visual image, that they're walking together, just that act of walking together, despite that slight gap. It kind of symbolizes, I think, just this ongoing process of building a connection. It often doesn't happen instantly, but it is just this gradual journey of small steps. Can we just talk more about this Kaori scene? Visually, it felt like every single frame was deliberately calculated to say much more than what was being conveyed in the dialogue. So Kaori was like plying her snacks off to Kumiko, setting her devious plan to bribe Asuka's mom in motion. Honestly, Kaori is just such a real one. We see that she is honestly always worried about Asuka and is doing everything she can to help her rejoin the band. She is Asuka's most passionate advocate, even when Asuka herself has given up and doesn't really reciprocate that same care. This line, take care of Asuka for me, okay, which Kaori said to Kumiko, and then Asuka responding with, well, I'm the one who's actually taking care of her. And Kaori's very knowing smile. I really felt like it was inferring that it's really Kaori taking care of Asuka. even though Asuka may not know that yet, or she knows it, but she doesn't want to accept it. So while Asuka strives for absolute independence and not letting anyone inside her walls, just being an island unto her own, so to speak, Kaori really sees through that mask and understands the support that Asuka truly needs in order to just move on with life or to reconnect with that passion. And I felt that inference of Kaori really wanting to be that constant support for Asuka was further emphasized by having Kaori tie Asuka's shoelaces for her. This whole scene, the way it was lit, you know, Kaori bathed in this sort of angelic glow as she bends down to tie Asuka's shoelaces, really highlighting her selfless support and desire to help Asuka. And on these focus shots were really something, you know, that close up of Kaori's thigh, really like emphasizing sort of this lowered position that she put herself in and didn't mind being in as long as Asuka was supported. And also that view that we get through these gates, showing Kumiko kind of standing awkwardly to one side as this is all happening. And then immediately following that kind of very intimate act of care, there's this shot of Asuka from above, you know, cast in shadow, being very rigid and inexpressive. And she wasn't leaning towards Kaori one bit as she was tying her shoelaces, in very stark contrast, obviously, to Kaori's active movement towards Asuka. And when we zoomed into Asuka's lips, it was just this very tense shot, and the light is like to Asuka's back, like she's kind of turned away from it, just in the same way that she's turning away from this care that Kaori is offering, and really all of her other friends are offering. It was such a strong visual metaphor speaking to Asuka's reluctance to accept help, even help as that is as unconditional and open as Kaori's, because of her fear of being vulnerable. But there's a bit of hope, because at the same time, you know, that light to her back is still there, kind of just waiting for her to turn towards it if she so chooses, just like Kaori and the rest of her friends are just waiting there for her, ready to support her. But yeah, I thought that whole shoelace tying scene it was just wow. Like, one day, Kaori, one day you'll win this, girl, I swear. Oh yeah, and also this part, like, as if to confirm that something deeper is going on than just a friend helping another friend tie shoelaces, the close-up of Kumiko's very confused, or maybe also kind of fascinated face highlighted how complex this whole dynamic is. You know, and once again, she found herself in this unusually intimate front row seat to a relationship that she's not actually part of, kind of like with the whole Nozomi Mizore situation. And then we return to this just very normal perspective again. Like, there's no angelic backlight, there's no ominous shadows over the face, just a very casual thanks from Asuka to Kaori for tying her shoelaces. And that flip back to normalcy also underscored that tension between the depth of emotions involved, and also just the fact that it's taking place amongst these very surface level interactions. I do believe that Asuka knows the depth of Kaori's care for her, but something about her shadowed eyes say that she's still, you know, maybe a bit too damaged to accept it yet, even if she wanted to. And maybe a part of her feels like she doesn't deserve it. Honestly, though, I really think that Asuka knows that Kaori is a keeper. And I loved during this whole sequence how they played with shadow and light to just add a lot more meaning to what happened on screen. Ultimately, it was a scene that beautifully illustrated that pursuing one's passion often involves a support network of people and friends who believe in you even when you've lost faith in yourself. Kaori's unwavering support for Asuka's musical journey, and not just her music path, but also just life in general, like the difficult situation with her family, embodies the idea that sometimes keeping someone connected to their passion requires a lot of persistence and patience and understanding and just a lot of unconditional care. Okay, so we got to Asuka's house, and I don't know, to me it looked kind of bare. Like, it really just mirrored the emotional void in Asuka's own life. I don't know. There was like this shelf of books reminding us that she is studying very hard with a lot more at stake than most students have. And then there's also the fact that she snuck her youth back home without her mom knowing. Although I have no idea how she hides it in that house because it is so bare, unless she has some sort of secret wardrobe that she stashes it in. So those two objects, right, the books and then the youth, I really felt like they encapsulate the duality of Asuka's existence, you know, the expectations placed upon her to study and to focus on her future career versus her true passion. That duality, I think, manifests in Asuka's behavior as well. She has these sad and reflective moments that then just immediately give way to her usual cheerful mask. And I really wonder in those moments, like, what is she thinking? You know, is she wishing that it wasn't so difficult for her to let her friends get close to her, or that she's glad, you know, that she finally has someone in Kumiko whom she feels inexplicably drawn towards and can feel like she can allow some of her true emotion to bleed out. Because to be honest, Kumiko is the only one that Asuka lets her mask down in front of. And I think offering to help tutor Kumiko was really just a front or a cover story to just have her around, to have that person that she can be real in front of. The huge reveal about Asuka's father, Shindo Masakazu, who is this like big deal in the euphonium world, adds another layer to Asuka's complex relationship with music. The way that, well, first of all, the way that Asuka just so casually dropped that bomb of effect onto Kumiko, knowing that she'd get a Pikachu face and just freak out, was almost like she wanted Kumiko to dig that story out of her. You know, she wanted to share that part of her life with someone who would just listen and not make any judgments. I thought, you know, the really big question was, what did Asuka mean when she refers to her dad as her former father? And at first I thought it might have been like a translation issue, but maybe there is some meaning that we can glean from it. I think first it just speaks volumes about her estranged relationship with him. Her parents divorced when she was 2 and she's never seen him since. But the reason for that separation is that Asuka's mom is the one who actively keeps them apart, which I wasn't surprised at all, given what we know about her and how she is also likely grappling with certain undiagnosed mental health issues, which does not excuse like her behavior and her abuse of Asuka, but does give us some context for why Asuka's mom is the way that she is. Here was a comment from Bob Jones that I agree with a lot. So one thing that I think is interesting is how Asuka refers to her father as her former father. Honestly, it sounds like something she practiced to say in front of her mother, which is true. I could totally see that happening. Is that unlike her clear dislike of her mother, she plays the euphonium, plays the music that he wrote, that I heavily suspect he wrote for her, and does everything in her power to see him or get him to hear her play. The line she said about, "My mother absolutely didn't want me to have anything to do with him," reads as less he left and wanted to be out of her life, but more that he couldn't, given her mom's temperament. It gives me the impression that he does want to be in her life. He did send her the euphonium and also those letters. And if anything, reached out and let her know that he is still there in some form. The youth is all she has of him, the only connection that they still have. Absolutely. I think it just makes it so much sadder, the whole situation. And I think, yeah, by using that term former father, yes, it's something she seems practiced in saying in front of her mum. Also, I think potentially she is linguistically distancing herself. It might just be a way for her to emotionally detach as a coping mechanism, you know, a way for her to protect herself, to create a barrier between herself and all of like the complicated feelings surrounding her dad, including the pain that it's caused her mom and her subsequently taking that out unfairly on Asuka. Former father, I think, also emphasizes just the complete lack of her father's presence in her life. There could be underlying feelings of abandonment or maybe even resentment towards her dad for his absence, even though, like, I honestly do think, and I think Asuka also knows, that it's predominantly her mom's problem. And given her mom's efforts to keep her father away, former father, like Bob Jones said, just might be how her mom refers to him and how she has framed that relationship for Asuka since she was very, very, very young. What's sad is that Asuka's relationship with the youth serves as a metaphor for her complex connection to her dad. You know, that instrument, again, like Bob Jones said, it becomes the only tangible link between them and is the thing that bridges this enforced distance. It's, yeah, pretty clear that it was Asuka's dad who sent her her first euphonium, along with like an old notebook and some letters, and it's a gesture that speaks to his desire to remain present in her life, albeit from like a distance. If he can't be physically present with her, he can choose to connect with his daughter through their shared passion for music. So if we dig deeper into that, you know, the gift of the euphonium becomes more than just an instrument or a passion of Asuka's. It really is this silent conversation between Asuka and her father. You know, every note that she plays on it comes to represent all of the words that she can't speak to him, all of the emotions that she can't express directly to him. And that old notebook, which probably does have her father's personal music notes in it, becomes like a form of indirect mentorship from him to her. You know, his way of guiding Asuka through her musical journey, despite her mom's vehement denial of that relationship. Which then means that Asuka's dedication to the euphonium takes on an incredibly heavy or heavier significance than we've been aware of up until this point. Like on the surface, it's her pursuit of musical excellence, right? She has standards for herself. She wants to be a great player. But underneath that also lies this more deeper, more emotional drive. You know, every practice session, every performance becomes an act of connection, like a way of keeping that thread between her and her father alive. And that makes me incredibly sad, but also it's a beautiful thing. We're always talking about how Asuka wears a mask in front of her friends, but this scene really brought home that a lot of her language is masked too. For example, she described her mum as a bit strange, which is like an understatement if I ever saw one. Even when she was describing how her mum falls into hysterics and is unpredictably abusive, she injected like a dismissive little laugh when speculating if that's why her parents got divorced. You know, it's this, again, more of this linguistic distancing that allows Asuka to maintain an emotional barrier between herself and also the harsh realities of her family life. It's this resigned attitude and attempts to make light of her own pain, is saying like, well, if I can't do anything about my terrible life, why not just distance myself from all of this depressing shit that's happening? The way that she never refers to her mom as mum, but she, is also really telling. Like, I know people who have an incredibly strained relationship with one or both of their parents who sometimes struggle with referring to them as mum or dad. You know, again, it's just a way to create emotional distance from a very deep source of pain or conflict. This thing that Asuka said about how it's not like she hates her mom or anything was eerily relatable. The way that she made sure to say that she doesn't hate her mom is exactly what kids say when they have to make themselves believe that. It's this very complex, ugly mix of emotions. You know, guilt over potentially being a shitty kid for not appreciating how their parents have, in fact, raised them, you know, put food on the table, pay for the school fees or whatever. Plus, this societal pressure to love and take care of your parents unconditionally. And maybe also this desperate attempt to convince themselves that things aren't as bad as they fear they are or that they seem to be. And in classic Kumiko style, Kumiko saw through that pretense or saw through Asuka's attempt to paint her predicament in a better light. And to Asuka, and also for a lot of kids who have an abusive parent, it is true that your mom will always be your mom, no matter how badly they treat you. It's kind of like you're bound to them, or they'll always be this constant, as Asuka put it, a shackle or a weight around your neck that you are destined to carry around for the rest of your parents' lives. And it's absolutely the worst situation to be in, especially if you're that young. And what's sad is a lot of kids in this situation grow up then to be adults in the same situation where they're still dealing with abusive parents who deal emotional damage for years and years on end. But I love how even in this dark moment, where she's just ruminating on how she's stuck in this awful situation with her mom, I love that Kumiko was able to steer the conversation towards like a brighter spot, you know, where Asuka could think back to how she got started playing the euphonium in the first place and how much joy it brought her, even when she was dealing with like a very difficult home situation. Asuka's comment that, oh, you know, God must be watching, right? And all her talk about being visited by karma, followed by just this pained laugh, really showed the depths of her disappointment that this is how things have turned out to this day. You know, she wanted so badly to make nationals because it would mean her dad would hear her play, and it's a way for her to forge that connection with her absent father, you know, through their shared passion for music. But the fact that her mom has been a block, you know, every step of the way and is making it so incredibly difficult for her to even consider continuing playing the youth just feels like a really cruel twist of fate to Asuka. You know, like the universe itself is conspiring to keep her from this dream of hers, and that really, at the end of the day, she does not deserve anything good happening to her. But Kumiko's response, or not really response, it's more her perspective that smashes all of that out of the water, is refreshingly straightforward. She's like, if you love it, just bloody do it. You know, and it might seem idealistic, especially, again, given the complexities of Asuka's situation and the fact that her playing the youth is associated with a lot of pain and confusion to the point where Asuka feels torn about playing the youth because it's wrapped up in all of this childhood trauma and current, you know, trauma. But again, Kumiko's very simple outlook challenges Asuka to have a go at separating out her love for music from all the painful associations it carries. She's asking Asuka, do you love playing the euphonium for yourself? If the answer is yes, then it's worth pursuing and playing and enjoying it, no matter what emotional baggage comes along with playing the euphonium. Essentially, Kumiko helped Asuka realize that her passion for the euphonium and for music can exist independently of all of that family drama. And it's a powerful reminder that pursuing what you love is a form of self-care and self-expression, even when, perhaps especially when what you love is complicated by a lot of external factors. And that was a key turning point, by reconnecting with her love for playing music for its own sake. Asuka might just find a way to navigate the complex emotions tied to her family situation. She can use her passion for her youth as a source of strength and a guiding light, rather than it just being a reminder of all of that pain. Before we get into anything further, bonus Asuka Kaori moment where Asuka straight up admitted that she would want to bite Kaori if she could. And I would bet my life savings that Kaori would absolutely let Asuka bite her. I just thought that it was a very important thing to note down and have on the record. Okay, what did it mean when Asuka said that Kumiko is like a euphonium? And I thought up of a couple of possible layers to that. It could point to how there is hidden depth to Kumiko, like the euphonium, which is often overlooked in the orchestra in favor of more prominent instruments, such as the trumpet. Remember how no one wanted to play the youth, and that's how Kumiko ended up with it when she was younger? So like that, Kumiko's true value isn't immediately apparent, just as people are often surprised by the euphonium's beautiful sound once they truly listen and get the opportunity to hear it as a solo instrument, which is rare. Kumiko's genuine empathy and influence on others is unexpectedly powerful, and it belies this deep emotional intelligence that she has that allows her to insert herself, I guess, or just navigate these very complex interpersonal situations that she constantly finds herself in. Kumiko is also like the euphonium, I guess, because the youth brings Asuka joy, and it was Kumiko who helped Asuka rediscover that joy. So it's like Kumiko acted as a conduit through which Asuka reconnected with her passion, much like the instrument itself. Both the euphonium and Kumiko are a bridge between Asuka's very painful and complicated past, but also like a bright potential future that she can have. Finally, I think both Kumiko and the euphonium have versatility. So I did some digging on what brass players themselves have to say about the euphonium, and interestingly, I learned that it is often used to provide counter melodies to other instruments, or to reinforce like the higher pitched woodwind instruments' melody lines. But it can also really shine as a solo instrument, so it can play all these different roles. Likewise, I think Kumiko really adapts to what her friends need, whether it's to be a listener, or whether it's someone to challenge you on like your views and your complacency, or whether it's just to be someone who is fighting by your side, who really advocates for you. This scene's just very peaceful atmosphere where you could clearly hear the sounds of birds chirping and the wind blowing, and also all the very subtle sounds of Asuka's playing, like the valve lifts and the tonguing technique that she does on her runs, as well as like the breaths that she took. All of that was very beautiful. And then it ended on this close-up shot of the very well-worn, obviously read a lot, letter from Asuka's father. You can see like the tape just kind of holding it together. So it's clearly very cherished by Asuka. And just another sign that Asuka has a lot of mixed feelings when it comes to her dad, but ultimately she really, really desires for that connection with him. What I think is so real about Hibike is that we see the characters seesawing back and forth between conflicting emotions. So even after that beautiful moment between Kumiko and Asuka next to the river, we see that things don't immediately change in the next episode. Asuka is still struggling with internal conflict over doing what she thinks is the responsible thing to do versus what she really wants to do, which is to play the youth against her mom's wishes. And we also saw that seesawing emotionally with Haruka and her evolving perception of Asuka. She had come to terms with Asuka's humanity a couple of episodes back, recognizing that she isn't some infallible superhuman. And so in the last few episodes, we have seen Haruka make efforts to help Asuka. But that acceptance of Asuka's vulnerability wasn't like a one-time, like done and dusted sort of shift. You know, Haruka herself still struggles with how Asuka doesn't seem to be trying anymore. Like deep down, Haruka still clings to this idea of Asuka somehow being a fighter, you know, really stubborn and capable of bending the universe to her will if she really wants to. And Haruka is still struggling to reconcile those conflicting views of her friend. I don't think the point is to judge whether Haruka's feelings about Asuka are fair or justified. Instead, I think it's just more an illustration of the challenge of adapting to new facets of someone that you thought you knew. You know, there are moments of clarity as well as moments of confusion and frustration when you're learning about someone. And sometimes people you've known for years can surprise you or disappoint you. And it's always helpful to think through why it is that you feel that way. The process of discovering things about someone and adjusting to the changes in them, it's rarely smooth or like linear, which really mirrors how real life is. Mamiko and Kumiko, just yay for this moment of sibling bonding. We really needed it. And I think this moment was yet another way that Hibike played out the overarching key theme of the tension between following one's passion versus conforming to parental or social expectations. So Mamiko was trying to make up to the parents by burning a bit of miso soup. She's such a good kid. Anyway, her explanation to Kumiko was like this deconstruction of what is a deeply ingrained Asian cultural notion that unquestioning obedience to parents and self-sacrifice lead to success. You know, that passion must be abandoned in favor of practicality. However, the lesson that we take from Mamiko's experience, which didn't quite end up that way, is that blindly following others' expectations can just as easily lead to repression and eventual unhappiness. This idea of being the responsible adult was just a mask for her repressing her feelings and eventually paying for it. I do love that Mamiko and Kumiko each got to tell each other how the uneven treatment from their parents, however unconscious, made them feel. For Mamiko, it was being jealous that Kumiko got to do everything that she ever wanted without any pushback from the parents. And for Kumiko, it was being the kid that the parents didn't value as much or expect as much from, or didn't think was as good, which either way feels just as crap. Mamiko's newfound enlightenment was like a real turning point in the story's exploration of pragmatism versus passion or idealism. You know, by choosing to take ownership of her own decisions, whether they're good or bad, she's fully embracing the idea that true fulfillment comes from authentically pursuing your own path rather than the one set out for you by other people. I feel like where Mamiko ended, like wishing that she had expressed her true feelings earlier, was sending the message that genuine success and happiness comes from finding a balance between passion and practicality, you know, rather than a complete sacrifice of one for the other. For example, like her new approach demonstrates that she has learned from her past mistakes. She's applying both passion, you know, for a life where she chooses her own things to do, And she's also applying practicality. She's understanding and reflecting on the consequences of her choices. She's chosen to further her education, but this time that's being driven by her own desires rather than what her parents want her to study. And that I think also shows a blend of practical action, furthering her education. That requires planning and being responsible, but also combining that with personal passion, the whole choosing her own path. So ultimately, I think Mamiko's story shows that balancing passion and practicality, it's not a one-time decision. You have to constantly be making these decisions, but also it's a very rewarding experience. Kumiko's very emotional response on the train to all of that and all of Mamiko's reflections, I think showed her growing understanding of how hard it was for Mamiko to get to that place of being true to herself. Maybe it was just also an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the role her sister has played in her own musical journey, and that she now has this blueprint forward. She has an example that Mamiko gave for how not to do things or how to do things. And I felt just this whole Mamiko arc really elegantly weaved together the personal growth of the characters as well as the show's broader exploration of the whole pursuing one's passion in the face of real world constraints. That the path to fulfillment isn't about choosing between passion and reality, but about finding a way to honor both. And it's no wonder that Kumiko was bawling her eyes out in public, which is like the worst. It's a lot for a teenager to take in and to think about. Just as an extra note, when Mamiko moved out of the apartment, there was a shot of her dad going back to the not speaking Asian dad thing again. And look, sometimes parents just don't change and they will never understand. And it's just something that we have to live with. But there was also a really interesting tidbit from Oxla that provides more context on why Mamiko's dad is the way that he is and why his actions could actually stem from a place of concern, even though obviously it doesn't excuse like the abusive language that he used towards his daughter. So they wrote, in the original light novel, Kumiko's dad was reticent and reserved towards his daughters, but he read the economic news about the cosmetics industry. And I think in the episode, even in that screenshot, maybe in the newspaper that he's reading, the word at the bottom left means economy, because he had hoped being a hairdresser is promising. Now at that moment, Kumiko realized that her dad was worried and caring for her sister in his own way. So thank you so much for adding that extra bit of context. I think it's really important to also recognize that even though parents may not express their concern in the best of ways, it's still worth seeing that they have concern in the first place. You know what I mean? Okay, we move on in this next episode to Asuka's drama. And as we said, the reality of her situation has remained unchanged, which again is very true to real life. She continues to prioritize her studies over band and is maintaining her very stoic, pragmatic stance, even in the face of being told that Natsuki really, really wants her to come back. And in that scene, I kind of really liked that tiny detail of Haruka looking a little bit peeved off. Asuka's insistence that she's content with her choice, even when it's clear that she really isn't, mirrors the conflict that Mamiko had just described to Kumiko. Mamiko is a couple of steps ahead of Asuka, and that parallel didn't escape Kumiko's attention. She probably was visualizing how Asuka is just on that train wreck of a path that Mamiko was. And it got Kumiko all riled up and spurred her into action. Like she marched herself right over to Asuka's classroom to tell her off, to tell her to stop acting like an adult when she doesn't have to. This confrontation, I don't know if you can call it that, but whatever it was between Kumiko and Asuka, like, oof, it was game on as soon as Asuka knew that Kumiko was not playing around. Asuka, armed with this arsenal of logical reasons for giving up on going to nationals, represented, the practical side of this constant tension that Hibike has presented to us. It's the responsible thing to do to focus on studies and give up nationals. She doesn't want to drag the rest of the band down if she can't fully commit to practicing. It's the exact same reason that she used with Nozomi, that she would be in more trouble than it's worth. But really, the underlying reason that Asuka is sticking to her guns is that she's probably just tired of constantly having to fight her mom on this, and she's just dealt with so much that it's just easier to let go. And then Kumiko's challenge to Asuka represents like the counter argument in favor of passion. Her assertion that everyone wants you to come back was met with Asuka's sharp retort, what do you mean? Like, who's everyone? And I think Kumiko got caught. She said something that most people say to make someone feel better. But Asuka is not the type to just take those sorts of empty sounding platitudes. So that shot zooming in on Asuka's eyes that are hidden behind her glasses emphasized that her emotional withdrawal. She was digging her heels in and shooting down Kumiko's good intentions. Like, really? Who really wants me back? No one wants me back, and you're just saying that. Asuka's attitude, I think, reflects a cynical but often a true view that people's expressed desires or words don't always align with what they really feel inside. They say things for all kinds of reasons, like to keep up appearances, to save people from being embarrassed, because it's like the socially acceptable thing to do, but it's not what they actually really mean. And then okay, so we're going back and forth, right? So Kumiko's counterpoint to that was, at the very least, the base section, like all of Asuka's base babies want her back. But Asuka just wasn't giving in. And it really got to the point of Kumiko saying, look, I want you back. And I'm right because I am right. When someone is so set in the kind of mindset that Asuka was, you don't win them over with logic. You use just pure passion and emotional appeal. And I found that transition particularly interesting because it calls to mind like a key aspect of the whole passion versus practicality theme of Hibike. Sometimes pure emotion and passion has to override conventional wisdom or logical considerations in order for you to get anywhere. Asuka's one last push to get Kumiko to give it up was really just to call her out personally. She made the point that Kumiko likes hanging around drama and finding out and digging up what people really think. But because of her fear of messing things up, she ends up just hanging back and watching things play out from the sidelines or from a safe distance, as in the case of Mizore and Nozomi. And Asuka's conclusion is, why would Kumiko know anything about anyone if she doesn't herself get personally involved with people? And therefore, how would she know what people think about Asuka rejoining the band? Basically, she's just talking out of her ass. All she is this busybody. Now, was Asuka's call out fair? And as much as I love and I really feel for Asuka, I really don't think that she had the right take on things. Her instinctive cynicism about anyone's good intentions has definitely clouded her judgment, and I'd argue that Kumiko does in fact get involved in other people's lives. Even in the case of Mizore, she somehow earned Mizore's trust without really trying to. She, as we talked about at the start, she has a gift of getting people to open up to her without really trying, regardless of her own intentions to make them open up. And same thing with Reina. I think deep down what was really happening is that Asuka was just throwing down the gauntlet to get Kumiko to try even harder to convince her that people do care. It was her defense mechanism kicking in again, because most of her life's experiences have taught her to expect nothing from people, and that it's better to steel yourself against disappointment by taking the cynical approach. The truth is, Asuka doesn't really know what people think about her either. And we already know for a fact that at least a good number of people do want her back. So here we had Kumiko, like, hitting back. You know, basically she's like, yeah, so what? Like, so what if you're right that not everyone who says that they want you back really wants you back? You know, screw them. Like, what really matters is that I want to play with you and that you want to play. You know, it's not about doing the responsible thing or, you know, the adult thing. It's about doing the right thing for you, yourself. And the right thing is always to follow what you're passionate in. Personal truth should always win over social niceties or perceived obligations. And that is how Kumiko really cut to the heart of the matter by asserting what really counts, you know, her desire to play with Asuka and Asuka's own passion for playing. That's all. You know, she reframed the entire discussion, moving it away from abstract notions of responsibility and taking it direct to the core issue of personal fulfillment, personal satisfaction. Her insistence that one's passion is always the right thing challenges conventional wisdom about being mature and responsible, and suggests that true adulthood, true responsibility involves honoring one's authentic desires rather than just conforming to external expectations and letting other people define what you should do. I also really loved that Kumiko brought Asuka down a peg. I mean, she really needed someone to tell her that she is also just a high school kid. Like, my God, it's like not her job to take all of the punches and push aside her own wants and ambitions for the sake of making her mom happy. Her desire to have her dad hear her play at the competition, her desire to play music full stop, is valid, and Asuka deserves to have it all. Kumiko's critique of Asuka's like misguided selflessness was particularly insightful. She pointed out the irony that sometimes appearing to sacrifice for others can actually be a form of selfishness, you know, a way of avoiding the harder path of fighting for what one truly wants and deserves, and also what other people want too, like Kumiko and the others who really, really do want to play with Asuka. And that perspective challenges the notion of self-sacrifice as an inherently noble act, suggesting that true courage often lies instead in pursuing one's passion despite incredible obstacles. Kumiko has grown so much since the beginning of the show, you know, from being someone who used to base her life on other people's opinions of her, like that senpai who accused her of stealing her spot in band, and who avoided committing to her music to, I guess, protect herself from the disappointment of potentially losing, to now just someone who absolutely floors it and goes for it, and earns headpats from Asuka in the process, and also who inspires others to really go for it as well. Her transformation really embodies the show's central message about the value of pursuing one's passion. And I feel like I've said that so many times, but really these two episodes really hit it home. The result is Kumiko finally gets through to Asuka. Like a miracle, honestly. I think it was Asuka finally hearing someone tell her or yell at her, to be accurate, that she is allowed to want things for herself, that being responsible does not mean sacrificing what it is that you want. But it really had to be Kumiko to do it. Like, I'm sure that Kaori and Haruka have probably said similar things in similar words, but for some reason, they didn't pierce the way that Kumiko's words did. And not just words, but her full force emotions that came out. And I think it's because Asuka trusts that when Kumiko says something, it really comes from a place of raw emotion. Like it is exactly how she sees the world with absolutely no filter. Unlike the platitudes or the comfort offered by others, Kumiko's perspective comes across as genuine and a deeply held conviction. She doesn't soften the blows, unlike what most people would feel like they have to do. And that rawness, that authenticity gives Asuka the confidence to then embrace her own desires without guilt and without reservation. In the end, Asuka made a clear, loud point to her mum by placing in the top 30 nationally. Like, damn, I don't know, maybe it was a sign that she did have room left to push. And not just in terms of getting crazy good grades, but by drawing a line in the sand with her mom. But also, can we just please have a moment of silence for those who maybe aren't as talented as Asuka and literally cannot get into the top 30 nationally? Like, for those who don't have Asuka's exceptional talents, the path forward might actually look more like Aoi's, I'm sad to say. You know, this journey of quiet acceptance and just subdued disappointment that there are things you may have to give up on. Yeah, a little bit of mixed feelings about that. I think the resolution of Asuka's dilemma through her exceptional performance in exams underscores like a deeper, potentially uncomfortable truth about this idea of pursuing one's passions. So, yes, the show really champions following your dreams, but Asuka's case also suggests that such a pursuit might be easier to justify and to actually implement by those with, you know, extraordinary capabilities. For others, you know, for like the normies like us, I think the balance between passion and practicality may be more challenging to strike, potentially leading to much harder choices and compromises. But, you know, I don't want to end on that kind of slightly depressing note because I do think that there are stories that Hibike shows, like Mamiko, for example, where they show that it's a really long and hard journey, but it is possible to balance passion and practicality. All right, guys, Hibike season 2, episode 11. Here we go in 3, 2, 1, play. Oh, Kumiko. She's great with that desperation in her voice. All right, I think we're gonna find out what's been bothering Reina. Hopefully. Maybe she just misses her wife. You know, Kumiko's not been around recently. Not really hung out as much. I'm very much looking forward to what they do with Natsuki in the next season. She's just sacrificed so much. I mean, not so much, but it was, you know, disappointing for her to have to give back the spot to Asuka, even though, you know, obviously she also really wanted that for Asuka too. Natsuki's just the best. Kaori. What an interesting like feet shot. True. She's not like very flamboyant as she was. What was that? That was Reina being like, "Don't look at me. I don't know you." I love catching all these little details of like Reina just delaying the way when she lifted her trumpet, just being a little bit out of it. Midori just sniffing out for any drama she can latch onto. Oh, maybe she's a bit heartbroken over, oh, excuse me, over Taki. This this drama just ramped up so suddenly. It's so exhausting being a teenager. I love that Natsuki reassured her that it's totally fine to not be a tough ass 100% of the time. Ah, keep those friends, man. Like Natsuki type friends. They're priceless. Just why? Just more Kumiko awkwardness, and these two don't help. I remember these two have always been the strongest Kumirei shippers, for sure. Yeah, like when they listened to her euphonium tape together, I think that was the last time. Telling her mom how she feels. Huh? Ah, go, Mamiko. Man, we're proud of Mamiko. Quick note, like Mamiko are just showing that you can be both practical, getting the financial means to support herself and also chasing our dreams at the same time. Both practical and passionate. Terena's is scary. She is totally just in her own world and expects Kumiko to just follow, no questions. Kumiko. She's like, Kumiko, you've always been able to tell what's been on my mind, and now you can't. What's wrong with you? Kind of feel for Kumiko. Reina's not easy to deal with. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Hashimata. I mean, he shouldn't have told Kumiko in the first place, but this is terrible. This is so weird. It's so weird how the conflict is about Reina's obsession slash crush over Taki, but the relationship problem is between Kumiko and Reina. Like they're the ones in the actual relationship. Serena didn't even know that he was married, nor that she'd already died. This is okay. We just go with it. Baby Reina. So she also plays piano too. Okay. I mean, I'm not surprised. Ah, that's cool seeing Taki with the trombone. Glasses. Amazing. Interesting. So really it was Taki who gave Reina permission to really go for it, regardless of what people around her were saying. Yuko, like, girl, what is wrong with you? It's that run again, that same run during the solo. It's so hard to tell with Yuko. Does she care for Reina because she cares for her, or because like Kaori is also worried? She cares. Yeah. I still miss what we heard in season one. Damn, she stayed there till night. And Kumiko stayed behind with her. Was that the watch? And again, once again, Kumiko just there for reasons. uh, oh, Reina. I mean, technically it was Hashimoto. But yeah, Kumiko did tell her. This is like getting dangerously close to crossing some boundaries. But I feel he needs to talk about her. He's living her dream, basically. Yeah. That's so Taki, right? Like, even from that photo, you could tell that he was kind of the one who people dragged along. He's more of a passive type. But what's the other? The other part is because he actually has come to care about the students, I guess. She didn't make her face. Hey, just like Asuka. I mean, and Reina is also the one who just kind of drags Kumiko around too. But it works. Oh. Mm. I now know that this is a trope in anime. Like, younger students wanting to grow up faster so they can marry their teachers. I miss those vibratos that taper off at the ends of those notes, but it's okay. Okay. That was an interesting one. Like, I'm glad that Reina got over the thing that was really bothering her, which was one, the fact that she didn't know about Taki's wife. Two, that Kumiko didn't tell her, even though she knew already. I still find it, a little bit odd. Well, it's Reina, so it's not really odd. Like her obsession with Taki since she was very little. And then that kind of just stayed with her all the way up until today. It is like a very typical like school crush thing, but at the same time it's not. Like it goes so deep. Like it completely shaped the trajectory of her life and her desire to learn music and become really good at it. I did like that it was Taki who, when he was like, it's you do have to listen to the people around you in your band because it's not just you're playing as part of an ensemble, but also you should be allowed to aim higher. If you are spectacularly talented, you shouldn't have to, as Kumiko felt like she had to do at some point, you shouldn't have to contain your talent. So I think that was yet building on that theme of whether or not you really go for your dream to be the best, or you kind of consider practicalities of what other people might feel if you outshine them too much. That was good advice coming from someone older, that you can do both. It's finding that balance between the two. Obviously, like Reina at the start was very bad at considering others because she was very much, it's either all or nothing. Like, I'm the best and I don't give a shit about anyone else, or I hide my talent and I don't fulfill my potential. Like, it doesn't actually have to be either or. And I think that as a musician, that's very relatable for those, not me, but those who do tend to rise to the top. The couple of people at the top who would get all the solos, who were, leaders of their sections and stuff. Because it's high school, right? And people will say and do stupid things in high school, and it's very cliquey. And there's a bit of like tall poppy syndrome where some people, not everyone, most of us were cool, but like some people will talk. They'll be like, oh, does she really deserve all of that attention? Is she really as good as she, as the teacher says they are? Like, there's all this crap that goes on and you draw a lot of attention to yourself as like a soloist or someone who's just better than everyone else. And so, yeah, it's tough. I also love seeing the dynamics of the Kumiko and Reina relationship in full display. Kumiko not really knowing what's going on, but trying to coast by when Reina asked her whether she knew why she was angry, and Kumiko was like, I don't know, help me. Yeah, I love how they continue to support each other no matter what. Kumiko at the moment seeming to be playing just a rock for Reina in terms of keeping it real when Reina was figuring out all of the Taki sensei stuff, and also staying behind for Reina to practice her solo part and just generally being there. So ever since they got close, like in season 1, it was always like Reina and Kumiko against the world, and it seems to have stayed that way, which I'm glad for. There was also just one last tiny bit of information that I found also hugely relatable in terms of Asuka not having practiced as much as she had, and then having to come back and sort of relearn the motions of the piece. That's probably one of the most frustrating things about playing an instrument at a certain level, is that you lose your skills and your motor memory so quickly. Even if you just take like a week off or something, it takes much more work to get back to the same level that you were before you stopped practicing every day. So it's part of the grind, I guess, and I love that they put that little tidbit in there. Oh yeah, before we start episode 12, one other part that was very illuminating, I guess, about Reina's background was that flashback of her playing a little piano duet with her friend, and they looked so young, like, I don't know, 6 years old or something. And her friend just burst into tears because clearly wasn't as good as Reina, but pointed out very rightly so that unlike Reina, she isn't as privileged as to have a piano to practice on at home. And that brings home that a huge part of the reason why Reina was able to become so good, a huge part of it is because her family had the means to support her to do so. You know, it's bloody expensive learning an instrument and mastering it. Lessons are so expensive. The actual equipment or the actual instrument itself is expensive, especially if you go for ones that don't sound like shit, you know, ones that go beyond a plasticky sound. They can go into the thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars. And you need someone to drive you around to practice and lessons and special competitions. Entering competitions costs money. You know, there's all these things that pile up, and practically only certain privileged families are able to support their kid to get to such a level of musicianship. And that is always something to keep in mind when thinking about or when having conversations about someone's talent, because talent, as we've seen in Hibike, can only get you so far. You also need a lot of other things lining up for you to be able to really fulfill your potential. So I think that was a really important point that Reina's little friend made. Episode 12, second last one for season 2 in 3, 2, 1, play. Okay, I know I said that this whole Reina and Taki situation was a little bit weird. I appreciate that as a narrative ploy, it was used to redouble Reina's efforts to help Taki and the rest of the band win gold. Which is an admirable goal, helping someone achieve their dream, a dream that was inspired by a now deceased wife. So I also love that shot just there when Asuka plays and she looks back at Kumiko. I love those two together. I'm actually also curious why Reina didn't pick up a trombone, having seen Taki be a trombone player. Cleaning your instruments. I am glad I didn't become a brass player because I've heard just cleaning the spit out is disgusting. Sorry, brass players. I'm sure it's worth it. I mean, these two. I never I don't know if I commented on this, but how does Kumiko's hair get so buffy? Mm-hmm. Crazy. Oof. Doubly crazy because it's taken me or us like a year and a half to get to this point. Midori is so extra. I remember in K-On! They always used to take have shots of the girls' bags together. Wait, there are hot cans? Huh? Right in front of me? He's so nice, even when he gets nothing from her. Yep, that's like a new phase of life. I can't believe we're here. What? In my mind, I was like, yep, this nationals competition is going to just extend into season 3. But obviously, that would be ridiculous. People would riot. Oh, oh, she's there too. Ugh. He's like, I still have expectations of you. Ah, Asuka, her dad's out there somewhere. Hey, character development. I love that she's not pushing it on to Asuka. I mean, more character development. Like from being like, who wants me back? No one does, to this. Just crab side all over. I love Mizore so much. Uh, she's so cute. Yay. Don't you feel like all of the plot lines are just coming together into this moment? That's some bloody good writing. They have to win, right? It would not make sense if they didn't. I mean, I don't know. Shuichi. Oh, wait, what? When was this? Oh, what? Oh, we don't get the performance? Ah. Oh, Kaori's so happy. It's so weird that we've just skipped to after the performance. Oh, okay. Oh, thank God. What? Oh, what? Take her hands. Coordinated cheers for conductors. It's okay, Reina will make up for it. The seniors are just like, yep, totally forgot to do something, but we knew Reina would cover us. That was it. That was her confession. Good job, Reina. This is so bizarre. Just straight to the results, eh? Ah, God, I knew they were going to cut away. God damn it. Oh, they didn't get it. Ah. Oh, this is an interesting turn. But what about all the third years? Uh Reina, pull yourself together. Oh, Reina, Reina. uh, I mean, Taki's gonna handle it. Yuko's like, I've been there with Kaori. I've got you. uh okay. Okay, this is good. This is good. Yeah, they didn't get gold, but they did their best, and that was, and everyone's happy with that. I mean, they do need an arc for season 3, I guess. I want to know about Asuka's dad. It's so weird that Mamiko would show up and then just leave. Hmm. Is he gonna compliment them on their solos? Yes. Uh, that was all we needed, honestly. Like, don't even worry about gold. Wow. I got a little teary at that. That was great. I mean, it is still sad that he has to praise her from a distance, but it's something. Haruka deserves all the things. She got them through, honestly, a breakup of the band. She had to deal with Asuka. Yeah. Season 3, here we go. Just setting it up. But I mean, I'm assuming we will continue to see the current third years in season 3, right? I hope. I really hope. Oh, Haruka. I do love how Shuichi's just rooting for Kumiko to have more chances to be close to Mamiko, especially after the whole conflict, you know. Ugh, why must they do this to us? Is that's it? Well, okay, they managed to reduce me to tears, so I think it was a job well done. Like, I know initially I was like, wait, we're skipping the entire Nationals performance, even though we've been building up to it this whole time. But I guess it was the same pieces that we would have seen at sectionals. So we didn't really need to see it. But I don't think that was the point at all in the end. It was really just bringing together the resolutions of the emotional journey that our characters have been on. Like Asuka's end end. It was brief, but it packed such a powerful punch, knowing how much it would have meant to her to hear from her dad like that. Even if it was through Taki, and even if it was just such a brief message, knowing that he's watching her progress and knowing that that connection between her and her dad through a shared love for the euphonium is alive, and that she was able to let him know herself that she has taken on board all of his advice, and that she got the euphonium that he sent her and all those years ago, and that she's still stuck at it. That was brilliant. And also the other, like Mamiko and Kumiko, I still find it so funny how Mamiko snuck in to watch and then just kind of snuck out again and wasn't even going to say anything to Kumiko. But Kumiko just running after her sister and letting all of the emotion out that she'd kept inside this whole time. That the reason why she even began to play the euphonium and continued with it and loves it so much now is because of her, because of her sister. And I think that tied such a neat, beautiful bow on the conflict that we've seen between the two sisters. I just love that they were able to meet halfway, I guess, through, again, music. So music really is the conduit for relationships being healed or relationships being maintained and established. And it wasn't, at the end of the day, about winning, even though I think that'll become like an important part next season. But really, the underlying message that Hibike has been sprucing on us is it's all about the journey. Yeah, I know that's like the most corniest thing to say ever, but it's true. With music, it's a lifelong journey where each milestone you hit, each day that you stick to your instrument and fight through all the difficulties of life and make friends and connect with other people through music, that's the stuff that matters. I love that. It's such a wholesome, non-materialistic view of what music can bring to people. There's still one more episode to go. I have no idea where that might take us. It's so odd, like Nationals came and went so quickly. I honestly don't know what they're going to do with that last episode. But thank you guys for sticking around. I look forward to your comments, anything I may have missed in these last two episodes. I look forward to learning, and yeah, we'll talk next time for the very last episode of season 2 Hibike. So in the meantime, take care, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.